Hello, my name is David Vasquez, and I'm Associate Professor of Literature and Critical Race, Gender, and Culture Studies at American University in Washington, D.C. I'm also the Program Director of Latinx Studies at AU. I am the author of Triangulations, Narrative Strategies for Navigating Latino Identity, and co-editor with Sarah D. Wald, Priscilla Solis Ibarra, and Sarah Jaquette Ray of Latinx Environmentalisms, Place Justice, and the Decolonial. I'm recording this talk on the ancestral lands of the Anacostia and Piscataway peoples, lands that were illegally seized, colonized, and renamed Bethesda, Maryland. Now to my talk, which is entitled Latinxes in the Outdoors, Leisure, Colorblind Racism, and Learning to Love the Natural World. And I should note that, as often happens in conference presentations, I've limited my focus in this paper to cycling rather than the other sports I suggested in the abstract. On to the paper. Since the start of the pandemic, people have taken to the outdoors in droves. Media accounts of crowded parks, trails, and beaches are ubiquitous as people seek refuge in relatively safe, socially distanced sports like hiking, cycling, and camping. One survey shows a 52.9% surge in outdoor participation. Sales of outdoor gear, from tents and sleeping bags to bicycles, also reflect this change, as the combination of supply chain disruptions and rising sales have depleted global supplies. Although anecdotal data suggests that Latinxes and other people of color have also taken to the outdoors in large numbers, the pandemic has, perhaps unsurprisingly, exposed racial inequality in yet another arena: outdoor participation. Racial disparities in cycling, one of the most popular outdoor activities according to the Outdoor Industry Association, is the topic of my talk today. In this paper, I will use two modes of analysis: close reading of industry surveys and journalistic accounts, and an admittedly experimental autoethnography of my experiences as an avid cyclist and occasional racer. Although my experiences and my analysis, through my experience and my analysis, I conclude that the outdoor industry, like nearly every other place in our society, is a racialized space that grants privileged access to some at the expense of others. Although I and other Latinx cyclists experience overt forms of racism on the trail and road, more often we encounter what the sociologist Eduardo Bonilla Silva describes as colorblind racism, or a slippery form of racism that blames its victim in a, quote, "now you see it, now you don't" style, end quote. For Bonilla Silva, colorblind racism characterizes contemporary life, particularly during the post-Obama era, and owes to the dominance of abstract liberalism and meritocracy. Colorblind racism is a form of racism that appears on its surface to reject the premises of racism altogether, all while reinforcing ideologies of racial inferiority. These soft forms of racism, although they seldom seem soft when one experiences them, permeate, as Sarah D. Wald and others have noted, how Latinxes traverse space in the outdoors and how we engage in activities often coded as white. To their credit, outdoor industries like cycling have in recent years attempted to diversify. Companies such as Specialized, a Bay Area-based bicycle company, have donated millions to diversity initiatives, including support for the elite Los Angeles cycling team Legion, led by African-American brothers Justin and Corey Williams. Others, like Trainer Road, an app-based cycling training company, have featured diverse athletes in their marketing and promotional materials and have initiated diversity programs for their own hiring. While these efforts are laudable, there is a persistent gap in participation in cycling, particularly mountain biking. According to the 2019 Outdoor Participation Report, the most recent survey conducted by the Outdoor Industry Association, Mountain biking skews male by a 2-to-1 margin and includes only 10.4% of African Americans, 14.7% Latinxes, and 16.4% Asian Americans. These percentages likely reflect lower participation in mountain biking since the report aggregates multiple forms of cycling, including road, mountain, and BMX. More troubling is that while mountain biking has experienced net growth in first-time participation over the past several years, particularly during the pandemic, more than two-thirds of this growth, or 66.2%, has been among whites. Importantly, almost half of those surveyed had minimum household incomes of $75,000 or more, well above the U.S. median income of $68,703. To be fair, lower participation in mountain biking among Latinxes and other BIPOC likely owed to startup costs, including a bike. A decent entry-level bike can run about $800 to $1,000, with mid-range bikes going for upwards of $3,000. Safety gear like helmets, gloves, and shoes, as well as transportation to and from distant trailheads. As with all outdoor activities, mountain biking also requires leisure time. It is also true that unlike some outdoor recreation like fishing or bird watching, mountain biking requires a fitness toll, particularly in hilly or mountainous areas that may require long climbs on steep grades. Although these statistics are unsurprising, participation among Latinxes in mountain biking lags other indications of Latinx participation in society. One would expect growing participation in leisure sports due to the growth of self-identified middle-class BIPOC. According to the Brookings Institution, roughly 40% of the middle class now identifies as BIPOC, with 18% identifying as Latinx. Moreover, while Latinxes match white participation in sports like running, there is a gap in participation in sports like cycling. Why? I argue that we can explain part of this gap by examining the ways the cycling industry conceives of its relationship with Latinxes. The industry has used flawed methodologies and outreach strategies that often perpetuate racial stereotypes. For example, I contacted the Outdoor Industry Association to ask about their survey methodology. In response, I received an email from David Mudd, a strategic research consultant with the Outdoor Industry Association. He explained in an email that, quote, in 2019, a total of 18,000 online interviews were carried out with a nationwide sample of individuals from U.S. proprietary online panels representative of the U.S. population for people ages 6 and older. Strict quotas associated with gender, income, age, region, and ethnicity were followed to ensure a balanced sample, end quote. Although this sounds like a rigorous methodology, there are several issues. First, restricting the survey to online responses limits possibilities for people who lack access to technology. As a recent story from CBS News explains, at the start of the pandemic last year, quote, 40% of Latinos did not have broadband internet access at home, and 32% did not have a computer, end quote. Limiting the survey to online participation has two important implications. First, it raises the possibility that Latinxes are underrepresented in the outdoor industry survey. Second, it limits the horizons of Latinxes as a market, making us less likely to be understood as a legitimate audience for cycling products and events. It should also go without saying that such a methodology biases toward more affluent Latinx families. In the past, the report has surveyed individuals at trailheads, biasing the sample to people already established in the sport. Likewise, no data exists about the survey locations, nor is there information about how participants for the survey were identified. Although no survey methodology is perfect, it is important to consider the methods employed by the Outdoor Industry Association to get a clearer picture of how they are conceiving of Latinx people. I also want to be careful on these points as they do not suggest that market legitimation is tantamount to racial equality. Instead, I want to underscore how the industry's own shortcomings result in self-perpetuated racial stereotypes and misconceptions about Latinxes that limit possibilities for inclusion. At this point, I'd like to shift my analysis to my cycling autoethnographic experiences. These experiences bring awareness to the ways colorblind racism operates in cycling and other outdoor activities. Autoethnography. It is a warm, by Oregon standards, sunny afternoon. I am riding along Lorain Highway just outside of Eugene, Oregon, in a pace line with my friend Enrique. Closely following a cyclist in a pace line allows the cyclist in front to create an aerodynamic advantage for the riders who follow. Think of it as a cycling equivalent of following a semi in your passenger car. The semi creates a slipstream that allows the following vehicle to move through space with less drag. Enrique and I take turns leading and following to share the work and to create faster speeds for both of us. As Enrique and I come around a sweeping right-hand turn, we hear a car approaching from behind. One of the reasons we enjoy this ride is because of the low traffic. Lorain is a rural road that traverses agricultural land. We're used to the occasional car or farm truck and move to the right when we hear the truck and trailer approaching. Over my left shoulder, I see a late model pickup truck towing a long flatbed trailer. It's the kind used to tow off-road vehicles or tractors. The pickup looks old, with faded white paint and a few dents. The trailer is quite long, probably 10 feet, with a loading ramp that's folded up. Suddenly, the truck and trailer swerve dangerously into the bike lane as it passes. We're moving at about 20 miles per hour, so when the truck suddenly slows in front of us, we have to slam on the brakes to avoid plowing into the trailer and each other. We slow down shaken but unharmed, and the truck disappears around a corner at normal speed. As we resume our ride, the truck again comes into view. This time, we keep an eye on it. Sure enough, it suddenly slows in front of us, causing us to again slam on our brakes. I'm shaken, but starting to get angry. It's obvious that the action is intentional. Again, we resume our ride. The truck appears a third time and slows. This time we yell at the men in the truck. We pull over to the side of the road and the truck idles menacingly for a moment before peeling out. The men in the truck yell something that we can't make out. "What the hell was that?" I ask Enrique. "A couple of rednecks who don't like brown guys riding around here," he replies. I am at the starting line of the 2015 Cascade Cream Puff Fritter Race, an ironically named 50-mile mountain bike race that traverses the Cascade Mountains near Oak Ridge, Oregon. The ride is anything but a cream puff. The Fritter is the easier version of the cream puff, a 100-mile sufferfest that is billed as America's toughest mountain bike race. The Fritter is a single lap of 50 miles featuring nearly 10,000 feet of climbing, including an opening 2-hour, for me, climb of about 4,500 feet. When you get to the fun part, it isn't much easier, with rocks, roots, and exposed ledges that can send a rider tumbling hundreds of feet down a steep embankment. I have a very long and difficult day ahead of me, a day made even harder by the 100-degree temperatures that are forecast for the afternoon. As I scan the 150-man field, the start is segregated by gender. I see no other men of color. The closest I see are 2 Spanish professional cyclists near the front of the race. One of them will eventually place second. Outside of them and me, there are no apparent black or brown faces. I wonder about this. Why is it just me competing in one of the premier endurance races in the country? Could it owe to Oregon's racist history? Oregon enters the Union in 1859 as a white-only homeland, a provision that remained in the state constitution until the year 2000. Are bikes too expensive? Are no other Latinxes stupid enough to attempt this ridiculous race? When I finish the race some 9 hours later, I am elated. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, including finishing my dissertation and getting tenure at an R1 institution. When I cross the finish line, I want more. I think of my nutrition, my training, and all the ways I can improve. My partner, who is an experienced marathoner, tells me that this is a sure sign of someone addicted to endurance sports. At the same time, I wonder about the diversity of the race field. Surely there must be other Latinx people who would enjoy a sweaty day in the woods. As education scholar Fiona Stanley notes, the scientific literature on outdoor activities shows that outdoor recreation, quote, lowers stress, lowers pulse rate, and lowers blood pressure, enhances mood, promotes self-esteem, and combats mental fatigue, end quote. Surely other BIPOC are interested in such benefits. From 2015 until this year, I participate in several endurance cycling events. As I participate in these events, the 60-mile Fat Tire Tour held in Bend, Oregon, the Sisters Stampede held in Sisters, Oregon, the Willamette Valley Metric Century Road Ride in Eugene, the Cycle Around the Lakes 100-mile road ride held in Cottage Grove, Oregon, I almost never see a black or brown face. Mine is usually the only Latinx-sounding name on the results page. Cycling has an image problem. Although the efforts of companies like Specialized and Trainer Road are laudable, cycling continues to be male-dominated and overwhelmingly white. In a recent podcast, professional road cyclist Justin Williams explained that European professional riders often derided him during his short time on the world tour, including using the N-word. Part of the lack of participation among Latinxes and other BIPOC in cycling owes to issues of covert and overt racism, as well as the self-reinforcing beliefs held by the cycling industry. How often, for example, do we see black and brown faces represented in promotional materials? Where black and brown faces are represented, how are they working to combat stereotypes? Consider, for example, a 2015 Sports Illustrated profile on Chicano mountain biker Tinker Juarez, a Hall of Fame rider in both BMX and mountain biking. Juarez, one of the most decorated mountain bike racers in U.S. cycling history, has won multiple endurance mountain biking events, including competing on the U.S. Olympic mountain biking team in 1996, 2 World Cup titles, 3 NORBA titles, 4 24-hour national solo championships, and a 24-hour solo world championship. Yet in the SI profile, mountain biker John Tomac, another legendary figure from the 1990s, describes Juarez like this, quote, I always thought Tinker was special because he looked like a Mayan warrior. He had Mexican heritage, but he seemed a bit different to me, like he had some ancient Central American native blood in him. He did things his own way. His training and lifestyle was non-conventional for professional mountain biking back then, but it was quite effective, end quote. Tomac uses several objectionable stereotypes when describing Juarez. Instead of hailing Juarez's innovative training techniques, Juarez was a proponent of high-intensity interval training decades before it was adopted by mainstream cycling. Or his dedication, Tomac points to Juarez's heritage, mislabeling him a, quote, Mayan warrior, and crediting his endurance to a mystical, quote, Central American blood, end quote. Given these characterizations by one of the leading figures in mountain biking, it is no wonder that the industry continues to have an image problem. I will conclude today by suggesting that these snapshots of industry practices are not exclusive to cycling. In fact, numerous outdoor activities have troubled racial histories, including the deplorable racism visible in fishing stories by Hemingway and Norman Maclean, the theft of indigenous lands to create the national park system, and other well-documented cases of BIPOC exclusion from the outdoors. This paper has argued that part of the ongoing exclusion of Latinxes from outdoor activities like cycling owes to the self-inflicted and self-perpetuating racial stereotypes the industry continues to deploy. Although remedies exceed the bounds of this paper, the industry might do well to consider working with Latinx groups like Latino Outdoors, Viva Northwest, and others that promote Latinx participation in outdoor activities. Thank you for viewing my presentation today, and I look forward to further discussion.